At a charity gala inside the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Phoenix, Arizona, a 70-year-old black man in a simple gray suit was seated at a table with a woman nearly 25 years younger than him. The room noticed instantly, not because they saw anything beautiful, because three men at the marble bar saw something they thought was hilarious. When the laughing started, quiet and deliberate, the older man set down his water glass. Everyone assumed he would ignore it. Older celebrities always ignored it. Instead, he stood up, walked calmly to the bar, and what he said in the next 15 seconds would cost those three men everything they had worked for. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back, 4 hours back, to a woman the entire city of Phoenix had decided was past her prime. Elena Marshall had not wanted to come to the Children's Arts Foundation Gala. She stood in her bedroom at 5:47 p.m. on a Friday evening, holding a navy dress she had purchased 3 years earlier and had worn exactly twice, both times to events where she had spent the majority of the night standing near exits. She was 47 years old, the executive director of the West Side Gallery, a mid-sized contemporary art space in central Phoenix that specialized in emerging artists from the Southwest. She had built the gallery from nothing. 15 years of her life, 2 failed partnerships, 1 divorce, that had taken half her savings and all of her confidence in her ability to choose men who saw her as anything other than a stepping stone. Her ex-husband, Richard, had been a collector. Old Phoenix money, the kind of family that had streets named after them and wings of museums dedicated in their honor. He had liked her in the beginning. He had told his friends she was brilliant. He had introduced her at dinners as the woman who taught him how to really see contemporary work. And then slowly, over the course of 7 years, he had begun introducing her as his wife who runs a cute little gallery. Cute little. The words had landed so softly at first that she had not understood they were weapons until they had already done there. By the time the divorce was final, she had genuinely believed she was small, that her work was charming but not serious, that she was the kind of person people kept around for decoration, not substance. It had taken her 3 years to unlearn those 2 words. 3 years of therapy, of rebuilding her roster, of standing in front of paintings at 2 in the morning and reminding herself that she knew what she was looking at, and that her opinion mattered. She was still working on it. Her best friend, Patricia Chen, had been the one to drag her out of the gallery that evening. Patricia was an arts journalist, the kind of woman who reviewed exhibits for the Arizona Republic, and 3 online publications that nobody read, but everyone in the Phoenix art world pretended to. Patricia had sharp edges and a sharper tongue, and she had physically blocked the gallery door when Elena tried to leave early. "You're going," Patricia had said, holding Elena's coat hostage. "1 hour, if it's terrible you walk, but you're going." And so Elena had gone. She had even put on the navy dress. She was now standing in the lobby of the Fairmont Hotel at 6:43 p.m., already calculating the earliest socially acceptable moment she could leave. The gala was a fundraiser for the Children's Arts Foundation, an organization that provided free art education to underserved schools across Maricopa County. Elena's gallery had donated 2 pieces to the silent auction, and Patricia had put Elena's name on the guest list without asking. The ballroom had been decorated to resemble something out of a design magazine. Soft amber lighting, round tables dressed in champagne linens, a small stage at the front with a podium and a microphone. A jazz trio played in the corner, their sound threading through the conversations in a way that was meant to feel elegant, but mostly felt like noise. The people in the room looked expensive. That was the word Elena's mind reached for. Expensive clothes, expensive jewelry, expensive smiles. She recognized a few faces. Local philanthropists, a city council member, the CEO of a tech company whose name she could not remember. And then, near the registration table, she saw him. Denzel Washington. She recognized him instantly, the way anyone in America would recognize him. He was standing alone, hands in the pockets of a gray suit that looked like it had been pulled from the back of a closet rather than tailored for the evening. No entourage. No handler. Just a man in his 70s waiting patiently while a young woman at the registration desk tried to locate his name on the guest list. Elena watched him for a moment. He was not performing. That was the thing that struck her. He was simply standing there, calm and unhurried, while the woman at the desk flipped through her tablet with increasing panic. After a long minute, a man in a tuxedo, Someone who clearly worked for the foundation rushed over and whispered something to the registration woman. Her face changed immediately. She looked up at Denzel, apologized 3 times in rapid succession, and handed him a name badge. Denzel thanked her quietly and moved into the ballroom. Elena lost sight of him in the crowd. The gala's program began at 7:15 p.m. A woman in a silver gown took the microphone and introduced herself as Monica Reeves, the foundation's Director of Development. She welcomed everyone, thanked the sponsors, and explained that the evening's format would include a silent auction, a seated dinner, and a special keynote address from a surprise guest. "We've also arranged for a unique experience tonight," Monica said, smiling at the camera crew that had appeared along the edges of the room. "As part of our community building initiative, we've paired some of our guests at shared tables, mixing artists, donors, and community leaders. We believe the best conversations happen when we step outside our usual circles." Elena's stomach dropped. She had not read the invitation closely enough. Monica began calling names. Paired tables. 2 people per table scattered throughout the room. Elena heard her own name called third. "Elena Marshall," Monica said, her voice bright and polished, and Denzel Washington. The room made a sound, not applause. Something quieter, a murmur. Elena felt every pair of eyes in the ballroom turn toward her. She stood up slowly, her hands suddenly cold. She walked toward the table. Monica was indicating a small 2-top near the tall windows overlooking Central Avenue. Denzel was already there. He had reached the table first, and he was standing beside it, waiting. When she arrived, he pulled out her chair. It was a small gesture, the kind of thing men his age had been raised to do, and she nodded once in acknowledgement and sat down. That was when the laughter started. It came from the bar. 3 men, late 30s, tailored suits, the kind of grooming that announced money and confidence in equal measure. The man in the center had dark hair slicked back with product and a navy blazer that fit him the way clothes fit men who have them made. He leaned toward his friend on the left and said something Elena could not hear. But she heard the laugh that followed, short, choked, deliberate. The second man laughed too, then the third. The sound was not loud. It was not meant to be loud. It was meant to travel exactly far enough to reach the table by the window and no further. Denzel sat down across from Elena. He picked up his water glass. He took a sip. He set it down. His face had not changed. Elena looked down at the menu in front of her. She had heard worse. She had been in worse rooms. But sitting across from Denzel Washington, a man the world revered, while 3 strangers laughed at the idea of her sitting at his table, she felt something crack open inside her chest. Not anger. Shame. The old familiar shame that whispered she was not enough. Not young enough. Not beautiful enough. Not worth the space she occupied. The man at the bar spoke again. This time, his voice carried. "They really sat him with someone's aunt," he said, just loud enough. "Guess they ran out of options." His friends laughed again. One of them added something Elena could not make out, but the tone was unmistakable. Mocking. Dismissive. Comfortable. Denzel set down his menu. He did not look at Elena. He looked at the 3 men at the bar, and then he stood up. The ballroom did not go silent. That would be too dramatic. But the tables nearest to them went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when someone does something unexpected. Denzel walked away from the table. He walked calmly, hands still in his pockets, across the polished floor toward the marble bar. The 3 men saw him coming. The man in the navy blazer straightened slightly. His smile faltered. Denzel stopped 3 feet from them. He did not raise his voice. He simply spoke in the same low, steady tone he had used to thank the woman at the registration desk. "I heard what you said." The man in the blazer opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I didn't mean anything by it, Mr. Washington." "Yes, you did," Denzel said. "You meant exactly what you said. You saw a woman you decided wasn't young enough or attractive enough to sit at a table with me, and you made a joke about it. You did it quietly, but you did it loud enough to make sure she heard." The second man, the one on the left, tried to step in. "Look, we were just messing around. We didn't think." "That's the problem," Denzel said, cutting him off without raising his voice. "You didn't think. You saw a woman, and you reduced her to her age. You looked at me, and you assumed I'd agree with you. You assumed I'd be embarrassed. You were wrong on all counts." The third man, the one who had been silent until now, said nothing. He looked at the floor. The man in the navy blazer tried one more time. "Mr. Washington, I apologize if we offended." "Don't apologize to me," Denzel said. I'm not the one you humiliated, she is. He turned and walked back to the table. The three men did not move. The bar had gone completely silent now. Everyone within 20 feet had stopped talking. Denzel sat back down across from Elena. He picked up his menu again. He did not look at the bar. He looked at her. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You shouldn't have had to hear that. Elena did not know what to say. She had been prepared for him to ignore it. She had been prepared to ignore it herself. She had not been prepared for him to stand up and walk across a ballroom full of Phoenix's wealthiest people and confront three strangers on her behalf. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yes, I did, Denzel said. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something that sounded like old, accumulated weight. I've been in rooms like this my entire life. I know what it sounds like when people think they're safe to say what they really think, and I'm tired of letting it slide. The dinner continued around them. Monica Reeves returned to the microphone and introduced the first course. Servers moved through the ballroom with plates of arugula salad. The three men at the bar did not leave, but they did not speak again either. They stood in a tight cluster, their faces flushed, their drinks untouched. One of them checked his phone. Another looked toward the exit. The third stared at the bar top as though it contained instructions he had not yet read. Denzel and Elena ate in silence for the first 10 minutes. Then Elena asked him a question she had not planned to ask. Why are you here? Denzel looked up from his plate. At this event? Yes. He set down his fork. My wife passed away 2 years ago, he said. The sentence came out cleanly, without hesitation, as though he had said it enough times that it no longer caught in his throat. We were married for 42 years. She was 74 when she died, cancer. By the end, she couldn't walk, couldn't eat, could barely speak. But she was still the most beautiful person I'd ever known. Elena did not interrupt. After she died, I stopped going to events like this, Denzel continued. I stopped going to most things. My kids were worried. They kept calling, kept checking in. Finally, my oldest daughter sat me down and told me I needed to start living again. Not for me, for her. For my grandkids. For the people who still needed to see that life doesn't stop when you lose someone. He picked up his water glass. So I started saying yes to things. Small things at first, a dinner, a screening, this gala. The foundation's director is a friend of my daughter's. She asked if I'd come, maybe say a few words. I said yes. I didn't want to, but I said yes because staying home wasn't helping anyone. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. Not pity, recognition. I'm sorry, she said. About your wife. Thank you, Denzel said. What about you? Why are you here? Elena hesitated. Then she told him. She told him about the gallery, about the 15 years she had spent building it, about Richard, the divorce, the 2 words that had almost destroyed her. She told him about Patricia dragging her out of the gallery, about standing in the lobby calculating her escape route, about the navy dress she had worn twice and hated both times. She did not cry. She had stopped crying about men several years earlier. But she felt the edges of something she had been holding for a long time begin to soften. Denzel listened the way people listen when they are not waiting for their turn to speak. When she finished, he said, "You built something. From nothing. That's not small. That's not cute. That's just true." The words landed in a place Elena had not known was still open. The keynote address began at 8:30 p.m. Monica Reeves took the microphone again and introduced Denzel. The room applauded. Denzel stood, walked to the stage, and spoke for 12 minutes. He did not read from notes. He talked about his wife. He talked about legacy. He talked about the children the foundation served, about the importance of seeing people for who they were, rather than what the world had decided they should be. And then, toward the end, he said something that made the 3 men at the bar go very still. Earlier tonight, Denzel said, his voice carrying easily across the ballroom, I heard 3 men laugh at a woman because they thought she wasn't young enough or beautiful enough to sit at a table with me. They didn't know her. They didn't know she runs one of the most respected galleries in this city. They didn't know she spent 15 years giving artists a platform when no one else would. They didn't care. They just looked at her and decided she didn't belong. The ballroom was silent now, completely silent. I want to be very clear, Denzel continued. That kind of thinking is not harmless. It's not a joke. It's the same thinking that tells people they don't belong because of their race, their background, their zip code. It's the same thinking that keeps talent buried and potential invisible. And it has no place here. It has no place anywhere. He paused. The woman those men laughed at is Elena Marshall. She's sitting right there. He gestured toward the table by the window. Every head in the room turned. Elena felt her face go hot. And if you're in this room because you care about supporting young artists, about giving people opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have, then you should know her name. Because she's been doing that work for 15 years while the rest of us were busy deciding who belonged and who didn't. Denzel returned to his seat. The applause that followed was long and uncomfortable. The kind of applause that happens when a room has been told something true it did not want to hear. The three men at the bar did not applaud. The man in the navy blazer set down his drink, said something to his friends, and walked toward the exit. The other two followed. They did not look back. Elena sat at the table, her hands folded in her lap, and tried to process what had just happened. Denzel sat down across from her. "I hope that was all right," he said quietly. "I didn't ask your permission." "It was all right," Elena said. Her voice sounded strange to her, thinner than usual. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Denzel said. "I just said what was true." The gala ended at 10 p.m. People began filtering out. A few stopped by the table to speak with Denzel, to shake his hand, to ask for a photograph. He was gracious with each of them, but he did not stand. He stayed seated until the room had mostly cleared. Then he looked at Elena. "Would you like to get coffee?" Elena blinked. "Now? If you're free." They left the Fairmont together. Denzel drove a rental car, a plain silver sedan with Oklahoma plates. Elena drove her own car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. They met at a diner on McDowell Road, the kind of place that stayed open until 2:08 a.m. and served breakfast at all hours. The booths were red vinyl. The coffee was burnt. They sat across from each other and talked for 3 hours. Denzel told her about his career, not the highlights, the valleys. The times he had been told he was too black for a role, not black enough for another. The scripts he had turned down because they asked him to play a stereotype. The directors who had told him he was difficult because he refused to compromise. He told her about the exhaustion of being the first, of being the only, of carrying the weight of representation every single time he walked onto a set. Elena told him about the gallery, about the artists she had championed who had gone on to major exhibitions, and the ones who had disappeared, and the ones who had stayed and built quiet, meaningful careers. She told him about the collector who had asked her, at a show 2 years earlier, whether she was sure the work she was showing was museum quality, and how she had smiled and said yes, and how she had gone home and cried in her kitchen for 20 minutes. They did not talk about the men at the bar. They did not need to. The diner closed at 2:00 a.m. They walked out into the parking lot. The night air in Phoenix was cool for late September, the kind of cool that made the city feel possible again after the brutality of summer. Denzel stopped beside his rental car. "Can I see your gallery?" he asked. "Now?" Elena said, "if you're willing." They drove separately to the West Side Gallery. Elena unlocked the door at 2:37 a.m. The space was small, long and narrow, with white walls and track lighting. 12 pieces were currently on display, all by women over 40, all from the Southwest. Denzel walked the length of the gallery slowly. He stopped in front of a large abstract painting, red and ochre, layered thick in some places and scraped thin in others. "Who's the artist?" he asked. "Her name is Carmen Delgado," Elena said. "She's from Tucson. She stopped painting for 11 years after her husband died. She started again last year. This is the first piece she finished." Denzel looked at the painting for a long time. "It's good," he said. "It's very good, I know," Elena said. They stood in the gallery until almost 4 a.m. When Denzel finally said he needed to go, Elena walked him to the door. He stopped on the threshold. "I'd like to buy that painting," he said. "The red one." Elena looked at him. "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to," Denzel said. "I want to." "What's the price?" $8,500, Elena said. "Sold," Denzel said. "I'll have my assistant contact you Monday." He left. Elena locked the door behind him and stood alone in the gallery for a long time. She did not turn off the lights. She looked at the red and ochre painting and thought about Carmen Delgado, who had spent 11 years not painting and had finally started again. She thought about Denzel Washington, who had spent 2 years not going to events and had finally started again. She thought about herself, standing in her bedroom at 5:47 p.m., holding a dress she hated, trying to decide whether to show up. The story should have ended there. It did not. On Monday morning, Elena received a phone call from Monica Reeves, the foundation's director of development. Monica's voice was tight, professional, and carefully controlled. Elena, I wanted to reach out personally to let you know that we've decided not to work with the West Side Gallery for future events. Elena sat at her desk, the phone pressed to her ear, and felt something cold settle in her stomach. Can I ask why? It's a decision the board made, Monica said. We felt that the situation at the gala created an uncomfortable dynamic, and we think it's best to move forward with other partners. The situation, Elena repeated. Yes. You mean the situation where 3 men mocked me, and Denzel Washington called them out. We don't want to assign blame, Monica said. But the board feels that the incident reflected poorly on the foundation, and we need to be mindful of our relationships with major donors. Elena understood immediately. The 3 men at the bar were donors, significant ones, and the foundation had chosen them over her. I see, Elena said. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up. She sat at her desk for a long time, staring at the wall. Then she called Patricia. Patricia arrived at the gallery 20 minutes later with 2 coffees and a look on her face that could have stripped paint. They dropped you? Patricia said. Yes, because Denzel told the truth, because the truth was expensive. Patricia sat down in the chair across from Elena's desk. She did not drink her coffee. She set it down with enough force to slosh some onto the surface. I'm writing about this. Don't, Elena said. They'll bury you, Patricia said. They'll bury both of us. Maybe, Elena said. But I'm still writing about it. The article appeared in the Arizona Republic on Wednesday morning. Patricia had titled it, The Cost of Speaking Up: How One Foundation Chose Donors Over Dignity. The piece laid out the events of the gala in precise, unflinching detail. It named the 3 men at the bar. It named the foundation. It quoted Denzel's speech verbatim. And it ended with a single question: who gets to decide who belongs? The response was immediate. By noon, the article had been shared 14,000 times. By evening, it was trending on local Twitter. By the next morning, 2 national outlets had picked it up. The foundation's phone lines jammed. Their social media accounts were flooded with comments, most of them angry, many of them calling for accountability. Monica Reeves issued a statement that afternoon, saying the foundation regretted any misunderstanding and remained committed to supporting the arts. It was not enough. On Friday, 3 days after Patricia's article was published, the foundation's board held an emergency meeting. Elena did not attend. She was not invited. But Patricia had sources, and by 4 p.m., Patricia called her with the results. They fired Monica, Patricia said. What? They fired her, said she mishandled the situation. And they voted to cut ties with the 3 men, publicly. Elena sat down on the stool in her gallery office. They cut ties with their donors? Apparently the board decided the PR damage wasn't worth it, Patricia said. One of the men, the one in the navy blazer, his name is Kyle Brennan. He's a VP at a commercial real estate firm. His company released a statement this morning saying they were conducting an internal review of his conduct. He's on leave. Elena did not feel victorious. She felt tired. What about the other 2? One's a lawyer, Patricia said. Name's Jordan Hughes. His firm hasn't said anything publicly, but I've heard from 2 people that he's been moved off client-facing work. The 3rd guy, Eric Watts, owns a marketing agency. He lost 3 clients this week. Small businesses who said they didn't want to be associated with him. Patricia paused. They're not going to recover from this, Elena. Not professionally. Not in this city. Elena looked at the red and ochre painting on the wall. Good, she said. Denzel called her on Saturday morning. I heard about the article, he said. I'm sorry if it caused you trouble. It didn't, Elena said. It caused them trouble. Good, Denzel said. Then, after a pause, I meant what I said at the gala, about your gallery, about your work. I know, Elena said. Would you be open to a conversation? Denzel asked. About what? I'm starting a production company. Small projects, independent films, documentaries. I'm looking for people who know how to find talent that other people overlook. People who've been doing that work for a long time. Elena did not answer right away. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a conversation, Denzel said. If it turns into a job, we'll figure that out. But I think you'd be good at this. And I think you've spent long enough being underestimated. They met the following week. Not in Phoenix. In Los Angeles at a production office in Burbank. Denzel introduced her to his partners, 2 producers who had worked with him for over a decade. They talked for 3 hours about projects in development. About the kind of stories they wanted to tell. about the artists and writers and directors they wanted to work with. Elena did not take the job immediately. She spent 2 weeks thinking about it. She talked to Patricia. She talked to her therapist. She walked through the West Side Gallery at night, alone, looking at the paintings on the walls and thinking about the 15 years she had spent building something that was hers. In the end, she said yes. Not because she was running away from Phoenix, because she was ready to build something bigger. The West Side Gallery did not close. Elena hired a co-director, a young curator named Amara Brown who had been working with her for 3 years. Amara took over day-to-day operations. Elena moved to Los Angeles in January. She kept her house in Phoenix. She came back once a month to check on the gallery and to have dinner with Patricia. The production company, which Denzel named Meridian Pictures, released its first project in October, a documentary about 3 women artists over 50, who had been rediscovered after decades of obscurity. Elena was credited as an executive producer. The film premiered at Sundance. It did not win the grand prize, but it was bought by a streaming service and reviewed well. Elena stood in the back of the theater during the premiere screening and watched the credits roll. Her name appeared on the screen for 3 seconds. It was enough. Kyle Brennan, the man in the navy blazer, was fired from his real estate firm 6 weeks after the gala. The company issued a statement saying his behavior did not reflect their values. He moved to Dallas 3 months later. Elena heard through Patricia that he was working for a smaller firm, in a position several steps below where he had been. Jordan Hughes, the lawyer, left his firm in February. He was not fired, he resigned. But the circumstances of his resignation were quiet and quick, and people in the Phoenix legal community understood what that meant. Eric Watts, the marketing executive, lost his agency. By March, he had shuttered the business entirely and was working as a freelance consultant. His client list, which had once included local restaurants and retail chains, was now limited to people who had not heard the story or did not care. The 3 men never apologized. Not publicly, not privately. They moved on in the way people move on when they have learned nothing except that consequences exist. Elena and Denzel did not become close friends. They did not need to. They worked together on projects. They spoke every few weeks, sometimes about work, sometimes about other things. He sent her a photograph once, in late spring, of the red and ochre painting hanging in his living room in Los Angeles. She texted back, Carmen would be happy to know it found the right home. He wrote it did. 2 years after the gala, Elena was invited back to Phoenix for an event at the West Side Gallery. Amara had organized a retrospective of the gallery's most significant exhibitions, a celebration of 15 years of work. Patricia was there. Carmen Delgado was there. 30 other artists whose careers had been shaped by the gallery were there. Elena stood in the center of the room and looked at the walls, at the work she had championed, at the people she had believed in when no one else would. She thought about the navy dress she had almost not worn. She thought about the table by the window. She thought about the 3 men at the bar and the laughter that had been meant to make her small. She thought of Denzel standing up and walking across a ballroom because silence, he had decided, was no longer an option. She thought about the years she had spent believing she was cute and little, and the years she had spent unlearning those words. And she thought about the moment, standing in her gallery at 2:37 a.m. with a man she barely knew, when she had looked at a red and ochre painting and felt, for the first time in a long time, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not because someone had rescued her, because someone had seen her, and she had been brave enough to let herself be seen. Sometimes the people the world underestimates are the ones who know exactly what they're worth. Sometimes the person who stands up in a room full of strangers is not trying to be a hero. He's just tired of being quiet. And sometimes the story everyone thought was about an older woman getting lucky at a charity gala is actually about a woman who spent 15 years building something real, and a man who spent 70 years learning that dignity is not performed for applause. It's practiced in the quiet moments when no one is watching. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been in a room where someone stood up when they didn't have to? Or have you been the person who stayed quiet and regretted it later? Your story matters. And if you want more stories like this, stories about people who choose courage over comfort, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one.